Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the LivBtr Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Siano, CEO of Sabre Advisors, and today's guest is Jessica Jane Farrow, currently a real estate manager for Vuori. Prior to getting into the commercial real estate business, Jessica was a model in LA before ultimately making her way to New York to work at commercial real estate brokerage Newmark under Jay Lux. Jessica underwent a major life change when she was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. What's crazy about this is Jessica and I were speaking frequently when she was going through this shortly after being diagnosed. On today's episode, we hear all about what it takes to be mentally tough and establish real resilience to go on with your life while fighting cancer. I'm happy to say Jessica's in remission today, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
I just wanna have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we prize, but everybody around prosperity.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the LivBtr Podcast. This is your host, Jay Siano, and this is the show for people trying to optimize every area of their life. Let's go.
I just wanna have peace.
Jessica Farrow, welcome to the LivBtr Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. So, yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of history in the real estate business, and about a year ago, you know, you and I were talking, and you, out of the blue, like, just crazy things went on in your life. Can you share with the community what happened to you?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start from February. I was in Aspen for President's Day, so it's a huge weekend for New Yorkers to go to Aspen and ski, and most of my friends were there. So I was there, and I thought I had food poisoning, basically. I got really, really sick. I couldn't stop getting sick, and so I had to extend my trip there because I couldn't get on a plane. So Finally, once I felt okay enough to get on a plane, I got back to Dallas. Again, couldn't stop vomiting, and it was pretty scary. So they thought it was my appendix. They thought it was like a parasite or something from food, which is terrifying, but we couldn't get it figured out. So finally, I had to go to a different doctor, and long, painful month story, they had to do a colonoscopy, and I had stage 3 colon cancer. So it came out of the blue, out of nowhere. I have no family history. I was 35 at the time, so very young to get cancer, this particular kind.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have symptoms because a lot of the time with colon cancer, there are no symptoms. You're asymptomatic, so that's how it spreads and is super dangerous. So mine was local, had surgery, 12 rounds of chemo.
Wow.
And now I'm totally fine.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So, okay, well, let's go back to you learning that you have cancer. Like, in that moment, what was going through your mind? You know, was it obviously, I would assume that it was surreal, where initially you're not necessarily even grasping the magnitude of this diagnosis.
So for me, it was, obviously incredibly surreal. I think that my motivation in telling my story is to advocate to my peers, right? Because like my peers, stuff like that doesn't happen to me. No way could that happen to me. And I'm going to go even further into really not thinking it could happen to me because I volunteer once a week in a children's hospital in oncology. I donate platelets. So
you were doing this.
I was healthy enough.
How did you get involved in that? Was that just
I've volunteered for years and years. My grandma volunteered at Children's Hospital, and my mom did. So it's kind of in my family to do. I ended up in oncology, mostly with bone marrow transplant patients. It was the best part of my week. I'm going back into it now that I'm totally healthy and can get back into it. But the point of that part of my life is that I am a healthy person. I eat healthy. I work out. I modeled for a really long time. So I knew how to keep my weight, and it's not like I was eating fast food or anything that are signs of someone that could potentially be diagnosed with what I was diagnosed with. And also when you're donating platelets to like kids going through the most traumatic situation I've ever seen, you think you're an incredibly healthy person. Like, how could something like this out of the blue, out of nowhere happen to me? And they still can't really tell me. I did all of the genetic testing. It's not genetic. All of it came back negative. So it's environmental and something I'm eating or drinking or breathing, which is why I would like to share my story, because if it can happen to me, it can certainly happen to other people. And if it's happening in our age group more and more, it's certainly something that we're digesting. So
yeah, I mean, that's really the purpose of this podcast, is to, you know, have an impact and share things that are helping people live better, longer, happier. And I have too much history in my family with cancer. Lost my mother when I was in my early 20s to cancer. And I remember actually when she was diagnosed that I actually couldn't donate. I forget if it was blood or plasma, because I had tattoos too recently. And that's like a thing. Yeah. Like, you can't.
Yeah.
And I never slowed down on the tattoos. I just kept going. But so now 12 rounds of chemo, like, we're talking about how much from start to finish, what was really the timeline? Because it's about a year ago, the diagnosis? Like,
yes, I was diagnosed
exactly?
May 24th, which was a really tough day. My mom flew into Dallas because it was a scary month of being sick constantly and not knowing why or how.
Of course.
So my mom came in. I didn't even know what a colonoscopy was, if I'm being 100%
Well,
honest.
you don't have to at your age. Like, it's not something that's...
Right. So the average age of getting your first is 50, which they've now done 45.
Yeah.
I think it should be 30 because this is happening so often in a younger age group. But yeah, that was a pretty bad day because you go in, you have the procedure, and like the person that's picking you up usually waits outside, and they let you go and they're like, we'll give you the results, whatever, later. So I wake up and my mom is there in the room with me, and you're like, they put you under. So I was still a little bit loopy, and I'm like, why are you here? This is weird. And then the doctor came in and was like, we need to get you into surgery right away. And I was like, I thought I was dreaming. My mom broke down, like hysterically crying in the room. And it was just a really tough day. It happened to be Memorial Day weekend. So it was the Thursday before Memorial Day weekend. So surgeons weren't in the office. I couldn't get a CAT scan. So it was literally like they told me, hey, you have cancer and we don't know how bad it is. You're going to have to wait until Tuesday.
Oh my God.
So like 5 days of Googling, which is terrible.
They should have taken your devices away, like right in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, colon cancer, everybody's dead. Like, it's the fastest spreading cancer. It's the number one leading cancer. I mean, it was a very, very hard 5 days. It was really hard on my mom. It was really hard on me, my family. My brother was in Ireland playing golf. He flew home. That was like probably the hardest part of the entire process for me, was those 5 days, just not knowing how bad it was. Like, all of a sudden, like, am I going to die of cancer next week? And I had no idea. So that was tough. Fast forward.
How did, in that, I don't want to, let's not fast forward so much because that's crazy. Like, you know, just kind of like hearing that and understanding how long those days must have been. Like, you know, that's just... not easy to handle. And how were the doctors? Like, were you able to communicate with people at least over those 4 days, whatever it was, where you can get some answers? Or was it just kind of like, because my experience with hospitals and doctors and cancer is like, I hate to say it, but it's really fucking transactional. And it's like, based on my trauma around, you know, losing my mother and living in hospitals at Sloan Kettering, spending every holiday, like, you know, that type of stuff, you start to like look at this as like, it's just big business.
Yes, fair. Definitely fair. I would consider myself a very spiritual person. I believe in alignment. I believe in manifestation. And I had a totally different experience than that. I had incredible surgeon, incredible oncologist, all in like a half-mile radius of each other. The 5 days that I had to wait to meet my surgeon and get a CAT scan for him to tell me like how immediate the surgery had to be or how far it had spread, those were the longest days. But once I met my surgeon, they were like extremely hands-on with me. I had to have surgery right away. They took out my tumor and 30 lymph nodes, and 2 of the lymph nodes of the 30 had spread, but it had spread nowhere else. So if it had been 1 lymph node, I would have only done 6 rounds of chemo. But because it was 2 of 30, they were like, this is a really odd case. You have no family history. Like, let's just, are we over medicating you? Maybe, but let's just get rid of it. Yeah. But my surgeon, my oncologists were texting each other. I wanted to do my particular kind of chemo. Side effects aren't normally infertility, but because of my age and kind of what was going on, I became like mama bear and adamant about freezing my eggs. So basically I had like surgery. You have to start chemo within 5 weeks of your surgery. And I had alignment of like my menstrual cycle being perfectly timed in those 4 weeks for me to do the entire process of like giving yourself shots, doing the egg retrieval. It worked out perfectly. My oncologist was texting my fertility doctor, who was texting my surgeon. I mean,
so it all lined up.
Yeah, it was all aligned. So I had a totally different experience, but I also had people telling me like, you should check out other surgeons, you should check, and I was like, I don't have the time. Like, I really, not that I don't, not a social, I just like literally had to get surgery, had to do my fertility, and had to get into chemo. And I had an incredible experience with my doctors. I still have an incredible experience with them. I'm
sure. I mean, they're like people that you can pretty much like, you know,
depend on.
Helped save your life. So that's pretty amazing. No, it's good to hear that. And I'm very spiritual too, which is why it's so interesting to me that you and another podcast guest happen to fall on the same day. And I'm excited for you to meet him because this is a common thread, and he's doing a lot for cancer and children with cancer. Yeah, so it's going to be amazing. Going to be cool. I think those things everything's like connected. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, I agree. So going back to your original question, like how did your mental health and focus, for me, I don't know how I ended up in oncology at Children's Hospital. Have no idea. I just like applied to volunteer, and that's where they put me for like years. And I just happened to be really good with kids and one-on-one. So usually leukemia, non-Hodgkin's, they're in isolation. So I would go into their room and spend time with them or their siblings, because their siblings are in there like not doing anything all day long with a sick kid. So I would play with them. And that was the really hard part for me, because I always would go home and tell my mom, like, the hardest part is the parents, and like seeing this, like, you could feel their terror. You could just like sense it. And this film over the terror of hope and like being in the best spirits possible for the kid, but it was all pretend because they were terrified. And I might start crying, but that was the hardest part, seeing like my little brother and my mom have that look of terror, but pretending like everything's going to be totally fine. That was the hardest part for me, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I could understand just being, you know, almost like feeling bad for the people around you that love you so much that are dealing with this, and you in some way feel responsible for the way they feel. Yeah. It's a crazy dynamic. Yeah. How are you doing now? Like from a mental health standpoint, how would you say, you know, because I'm always just trying to like implement things in my life that allow me to kind of be more resilient and like keep everything, you know.
You're very motivating like that. I watch your Instagram every day, and you're incredibly motivating.
Thank you.
The guests that you have, I start following them. So I've taken more of a step. I've always kind of practiced mental health, and I meditate and work out and journal and all of those things. I'm working on it. I used to be completely fearless. There's not a whole lot that you could put in front of me that I wouldn't try and tackle or be intimidated by. And the one thing that I'm having the hardest time with is I've lost that part of me. Like, I'm terrified all the time now. I'm paranoid all the time. Like, recurrence is constantly on my mind. So I really work at being positive and not putting that into the universe, because like there's the science and then there's the metaphysical component of like how this could have happened to me. And I'm a very busy, stressed person, and I think stress is really bad for your body. So there's potential that like I made myself sick, right? So I'm working through that, but I think I have a little bit of PTSD, to be totally honest.
I mean, it's natural too, right? Because I feel like it's impossible to, you know, just be chill about something that's so huge, traumatic and all the things. And, you know, and I think as we get older too, like for me, same, like you know, I was quite an idiot for many years, just, you know, had no fear, never feared consequences, and especially after losing my mom, like that got worse, you know. And I just, you know, I mean, you know, a lot of my crew, you know, we just partied and had a good time, and you know, and never thought about life could possibly not be great and easy and so on and so forth. And, you know, all of a sudden something happens, and, you know, obviously, again, you know, the loss of my mother was a big wake-up call, but I, instead of getting on track, I kind of went deeper and into a darker place and stopped caring, which was terrible and sucked at such a young age to have to figure that out. But from there, I mean, I feel like all the great things that I have now are a result of, you know, the dark things. And it's... Well, let's back up, because we dove right into this, which is tremendously important, and I'm so happy that you are in the place that you are. It's you know, it's to be celebrated. It's amazing. Congratulations for, I mean, what a year. What a year. But let's back up. So who is Jessica Jane Farrow?
Oh, wow.
Let's bring, you know, because people who don't know you that are listening to this, they just learned about, you know, you, but only one, you know, specific thing. So back it up, because you and I know each other because of business. So, you know, but I'm curious how you got into the business. These are things I don't know.
So, my name's Jessica Jane Farrow. I am the real estate manager for a company called Vuori.
Congratulations on that as well.
Thank you. Awesome. So I handle all of their real estate in the South and up through the East Coast, which is finally in my career a major alignment for me. I started probably 11, 12 years ago. I was a broker at Newmark in the city for 8 years. But before that, I was in LA and I was modeling, and that's why I came to New York. And it was just that kind of pivotal moment where you either become like a major supermodel or you develop a different career. And it was time for me to be like, okay, I have to pick something else that I could have a future with in case this doesn't pan out the way I wanted. So at that time, I was really close with Jay Lux and his then girlfriend, and he was like, I really need help in New York. You have to get your real estate license, interview at Newmark. So I did that within like a month. I was very focused, very honed in on it, and I really took to it because I obviously I started modeling when I was 14, so I grew up in the fashion industry. I knew that was a passion, but I wanted a different kind of aspect of it. So I took to it. I specialized in high street fashion, landlord, tenant rep as a broker. I was by myself in New York. Jay is based in California. So
Jay has every sign in Beverly Hills and beyond.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So it was a really good way for me to learn. I was just like kind of thrown in with the sharks, and yeah, I worked really, really hard. It was a grind. It was not always easy.
No, to say the least.
Yeah, it was a very stressful. I think I've always been in incredibly stressful, competitive industries, which, like you were saying, hard in the moment, but now I'm in this place of my life where I think I got through a really hard time because I have the capability of going through hard things.
Yeah.
I can do that. But I'm also learning not to stress your body out. Your mind is incredibly powerful. So keep those things healthy. Work is not life. I'm really working on that.
Yeah.
I take my work incredibly, incredibly seriously, maybe too seriously. I have always put my career above everything else. And so now I'm in this trying to figure out my work-life balance. I want to get married. I want to have kids in the city. Like, none of my friends have really done that still. We just, like, are competitive in our careers, so we put that off. And now I live in Dallas, where people did that much sooner in life.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting dynamic of my friends in Dallas and my friends in New York and me wanting those things and me keeping my career, and how do I do both, and how do I meet somewhat, my expectations are so much higher now. So I'm working through all of those things. But yeah, I feel really great about my career. I love my career. I'm healthy now. So that was my main focus.
Where did you grow up?
Denver.
Okay.
I grew up in Denver. Born and raised there. Left right after high school to go to LA to model. And then I was in New York for about 8 years. Left in COVID. Went back to Colorado.
Good time to leave.
Yeah.
COVID
Especially as a retail broker.
It was so depressing. It was crazy.
Yeah. I had to pivot and try and figure out how to make an income. So I started consulting landlords and tenants on renegotiating leases. Yeah. Which was not pretty at all.
It's not fun. No. It's like, but it's very necessary. It's like, it's being in the industry now for going on 24 years. It's like the downturns are always like, you have to figure out how to stay busy, and it becomes the workout stuff, right? Like figuring out how to, dissolve and liquidate and consolidate and all those things, which are really not fun. And you don't, I mean, I hate to say it, but you don't really get compensated, well or much for that, right?
For the work you're doing.
No. So it's really not a good time, but this industry's painful.
Yeah.
As a broker,
it's painful.
It's really like, it's painful. And you said a lot, and I feel like it's interesting because my experience, it was like I didn't even know what commercial real estate, like retail brokerage was.
Yeah.
And I was just in that dark place, lost my mom. My first job out of college, I went to the University of Arizona, you know that. I lost my mom right after graduating, which I would have stayed out west. A lot of my homies are in LA, and always envisioned myself staying out west, moving to LA. And it's crazy because it's like that sliding doors thing where, you just never, anything that happens even in a day, I'm pretty confident that the meeting that we're going to have after this, that it's going to change your life in some way.
Really?
I'm very confident in that.
Wow.
And I feel like that's what's awesome about life. You never know where today's going to take you. And, for me, it's I feel like I was so unhealthy, in starting out in commercial real estate brokerage. My first job was at Prada, believe it or not. So I was an assistant buyer for men's Prada and Miu Miu. It was awesome. It was a great experience, but I was DJing at night and promoting parties and showing up with one eye open and grinding it out. But now it's I feel like for you, you're in such a great place where you realize that sometimes less is more, from a hustle, grind, workday, standpoint, like if you are just more focused as opposed to busy, like I think we all struggle with that when we're young, right? Like we think that if we're going to be really busy and we're going to work the most amount of hours that we're going to get this, further ahead. Yeah. That's so not the case. Like I've realized in every area of my life, if I'm like really focused and protect my time and have boundaries and, I get so much further along, Absolutely. And for you both personally and professionally, it's like you have to, because I robbed my family even like for many years of like, no, I got to go do this. I'm not going to be around. I'm not going to, and I look back on those days and I think a lot, I got to where I am as a lot of that, like just willing my way, like I'm, failure is not an option, all that stuff. But I think as you mature and you prioritize and you elevate, you realize there's a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a broker, when it becomes survival, you're all over the place just trying to get deals done, and it is extremely stressful. And I come from a place and family where like I've been taking care of myself since I was 17 years old. There is no backup plan. It is all on me, which is great. I'm glad my family is that way because our work ethic is strong, and my brother and I have both become very successful because we're very driven people. But when you don't have a backup plan, it's scary, really scary. To be able to survive in this city too is incredibly difficult. But yeah, once I determined like I can't do this to myself anymore. I'm all over the place. I'm just trying to get whatever deal done to make that commission that I don't get paid until 3 months from now anyways.
If you're lucky.
Exactly. When the door opens 2 years later, it just wasn't, my talent wasn't being used in the proper manner. So I was like, I'm going to work in-house. I'm going to work for one landlord or one tenant. And I honed in on just like becoming the best at that. Yeah. And then finally, after a lot of trial and error, I'm finally in a place where I think that I'm blossoming and blooming in my position and company. And so I'm really happy. But yeah, I'm also at 35. I mean, it took years and years and years and grind and hustle. But yeah, it comes with age, obviously, knowledge of putting yourself first and your mental, physical health.
I think that you're just aligned with a brand that is so perfect for you too. Like it's pretty crazy. It is.
It really is.
I don't think there's not an abundance of brands that, would align so perfectly. So it's just.
No, that was a tough moment too, because I actually worked for a different company when I got sick. Yeah. And I can't speak too much of it. Sure. But basically, I was laid off 6 days before I started chemo, which was really that was not ideal. So just so much stress and so much anxiety, and none of it is worth it. Like it all gets figured out, and the universe conspires to align to where you're supposed to be. And now I work for a company that's like the most health and wellness focused company I could find in what I do. So everyone I work with no one knew that I was sick the entire time I was sick, except for my direct boss, just because sometimes I wouldn't feel good or sometimes I would be fatigued, and I didn't want her thinking it was like a lack of motivation or that I didn't know what I was doing. So she was the only person that knew that I was,
what you were
going through 12 rounds of chemo. And she looks at me and she's like, I forget. Like I completely forgot because I didn't lose my hair, which is obviously what most people think of when you're going through chemotherapy. But chemotherapy has come so far that a lot of them, that's no longer a symptom, which is, amazing. Wow. But yeah, I pretty much hid it for a year.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, obviously we're here to talk about all things being better today than we were yesterday. But I have to get some perspective on commercial real estate because, obviously we're in the industry and what you said about how difficult it is, and we both have the same experience. I think anybody who, is in the industry would say the same thing, especially as a broker, to your point. So it's like, what I kind of worry about is so many things in the brokerage space are just, it's almost like, I don't want to say almost impossible for young people to have breakout success in a relatively short amount of time, but it's so difficult that it is almost impossible, right? Meaning most people, even in a good economy, are not, if they close a deal, which takes a while to even do, unless you're on somebody's team and you're, taking a small portion, which really isn't going to get you anywhere anyway. Like, it's just the brokerage model is just so backwards. And I feel like, in today's day and age, like, you would think that it has to change in some way or we're not going to have young talent, and in the city, it's like you have young people that are basically like getting coffee for the first 5 years, essentially, right? And like the people who stick it out and learn and get through that are at the essentially the top executives essentially in the city, right? But it's like really tough. It's like Navy SEAL training camp.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yes, it's absolutely one of the hardest industries, I think, to break into. You're spot on. Something needs to change. It needs to adjust to the times.
Is it that way, do you think, because your experience obviously similar to mine is, New York, LA, for me, kind of everywhere in between later on in life. But do you think it's that way for Nashville, Tennessee brokers?
I don't know how people in secondary markets survive.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
But I feel like it's probably easier to there's less competition than New York City, or I don't know.
Well, yeah, of course. New York is an anomaly. It's in a category of its own. And you have your primary markets and it's super competitive, but we've grown in this industry together. Just like my brokers that I use in New York, I've known them since I was 24 when I started. I've known them the entirety of my career. My markets are interesting because they're unsaturated. So a lot of them are new markets for the brand. So I take it on myself as I do because I just am controlling in my work. So I do market tours, and then I kind of figure out if I use a master broker or if it's a particular market that I need someone boots on the ground. And I usually go for brand new brokers because I myself was a brand new broker. They work harder. I can rely on them to get down and dirty in a negotiation if they need to. And if I call them and I'm like, I really need you to go to this space right now and take photos and videos, they do that. A lot of brokers that have been in this for a long time are like, I'm in Europe. Bye. Yeah. I don't have time.
No, it's funny though, because I think that you're also helping somebody in their career, for me,
mentorship.
That was the opportunity that was given to me by Starbucks, a year and a half into my career. Which, without Starbucks, it's I know that I would never have become, the broker that I am today. But I also, it's funny because I'm so maniacal, I think, like you, that if a client of mine asks me to go take pictures, I am late 40s, own my own company. It doesn't matter.
Still the hustle.
You're just wired that way. And I think that, not everybody is per se, right? Because the more successful you become and, the less you need money, right? Because a lot of that early on for young people, for sure, it's, they're starving. I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. But that's the biggest thing is I feel like the people that are so desperate are making bad decisions out of desperation, which is what's wrong with the industry. Because if you were able to give, and I think the big brokerage companies, I went to CBRE. It was the first time I had health insurance, it was, and I had a expense account and they paid me to go and all the things, but I had big clients and I was generating a ton of revenue. Right. So of course they're paying for that, right? Which is, is what it is. But I just feel like without young people being able to have a sense of security, they're constantly chasing their tail in desperation to make a deal that maybe shouldn't happen. Yeah. Like that's the fucking worst part. And is it in
the best interest of the tenant or landlord?
And obviously you in-house as a real estate manager, you're able to filter through the bullshit. And obviously, retailers and tenants in general, good ones, have a really strong process of vetting and site, ultimately approving a site.
Yeah.
Can you talk through that a little bit? Like the process of actually like how a deal goes to committee and gets approved?
Yeah. So I handle site selection. I negotiate the LOI and then I negotiate the lease, but we have in-house counsel. My direct boss was the director of real estate for, I think it was the West Coast for Apple. So she is just, she's incredible. She's my mentor now. Amazing. I look up to her so much. I have mad respect for her. It's interesting, like her sense of disappointment in anything I do would send me. So I feel like that's a good point for younger people in what we do. Find a mentor that you have incredible amount of respect from, that you want to learn from, because there's also a path of you don't want to disappoint them and you work harder for them. But it goes back to like honing in on one thing instead of just like throwing as many balls against the wall and hoping one of them sticks.
And by the way, like this audience is not a commercial real estate audience, so that applies to any industry.
Yes, absolutely. I find a mentor that you want to be exactly like, and it helps you in life.
You could collapse. I always say, and I wish I would have taken that route earlier on. Like you can collapse time.
Yeah.
By having somebody that has that. First off, I'm sure that she has very high expectations, or she wouldn't be in the position that she's in.
Oh yeah,
which is amazing, right? But what you're talking about is showing up. And I think 90% of the people don't fucking show up. Like it's just like show the fuck up.
It's so crazy. I will say, I guess I'm a millennial, but the generations younger than me, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I really don't. There is a work ethic, but it's about things and
feelings.
It's if I were to have ever cried in a boardroom at Newmark, they would be like, fuck out of here. Like, what? Yeah. There is no, you have to rise to the occasion.
How do the big brokerage companies kind of deal with,
I have no
idea. That mentality?
Because, I have no idea.
I don't think that you could be successful in this space if you're
crying when you don't get your way. That's not an option. No. Especially when you're an intern or brand new. I don't know. But yeah, she's incredible. I have the utmost respect for her. But yeah, she has really high expectations of us, which someone with my type of personality wants to rise to. But I'm also in a limbo of wanting to be a mentor also, but still, I think everyone could use mentorship. But in life, she's a really good mentor because she too was just like a grinder, work to the bone, and is like, I need to have a work-life balance. So we're all kind of in this category of women that worked in a male-dominant industry. So all of the life lessons that came with that, now we're successful and now we have each other's back, which is not always the case. I feel like there is this feminist movement and everyone pretends to have each other's back, but girls are the meanest to each other, the most backstabbing, the most betrayal. So finding your niche of people in work, in life, that truly want the best for you, but truly make you rise to the occasion are the mentors that I think people should look for. Like, you don't want someone to tell you everything you want to hear. You want someone to tell you what's up and, like, when you mess up or when you could do something better. Like, those, I think, are the people you should surround yourself with. So I feel like I'm finally there in my career, which is really happy place to be. But no, it was not like that for probably a decade.
Yeah. Which I think is pretty normal. That's the, it's kind of like when I talk about early career stuff, and people, or even young people, like, reach out to me to, like, pick my brain, and I get 5 people a day that, like, I'll walk past, be like, dude, like, I want to work with you, like, I want to just, like, jump on you. I'm like, yeah, you really don't, like, I'm so honest. It's like, I'm like, honestly, I don't recommend it, like, because it really is so difficult. Like, people see I don't want to say the finished product. I'm a work in progress, and I pride myself on that. Yeah. But I think I'm in a great place, and I think it's taken a lot of work to get where I am in every area of my life. Yeah. And I still have a lot to do. But I'm fairly honest about that. You know? Like, I don't think it's definitely not for everybody. And if I went back, knowing what I know now, I know I probably wouldn't have chosen this path. I think I could say that. Really? Yeah, because again, I just lost my father, and he wasn't really when my mom passed, he moved to Florida, and my sister and I just stayed in New York. He got remarried, like, shortly thereafter, and he was not, like, a mentor or somebody that, like, helped me in business at all. And if anything, he was more, like, competitive with me. And while he was alive, I wouldn't really talk like this. But now that he's not, I can be more honest. And I think it's a little therapeutic for me. Yeah. But it's like, so for me, I think a lot of, like, the perseverance, even though he was saying to me, like, early in my career, you're a schmuck. Like, why are you working for somebody essentially for free, or, like, taking a draw? Like, you're going into debt working for somebody. Like, and I understand that philosophy and mentality, especially to somebody in his generation. And I think that's, like, it really calloused me, and I had to prove always to myself, but to him too, that I could actually do this, So I think, so looking back at that stuff, it's like, if I didn't have that situation, I don't know if I would have, ever gotten to the place I am now. Right. But again, looking back, I don't know if it was, where I'd be if I chose a different path. Yeah.
It's interesting that you have that backstory, because I too don't have that close of a relationship with my dad. We're working on it. Definitely when I got sick, it catapulted us into working on our relationship. But I think that in trades like ours, where it is cutthroat and competitive, it's people that have something to prove. Yeah, I agree. We're always people that are trying to prove something to our dad, to ourselves, to our peers. It's always like, I'm going to show you how good I am. I'm going to show you how talented I am. So that maybe unhealthy mindset of, like, you don't really have to prove yourself to anybody but yourself to be, like, a good human being, and you know the difference between right and wrong. But that's not how I'm wired. I'm wired to be proving my value and my worth to people. And personally, it's not that healthy of a trait of mine, but in work, like, I will win. Totally. So it's, I think that a lot of us in what we do are like that. We're proving something to someone.
Totally. And like, a younger version of myself would almost, like, I think I would lie and say, like, I'm proving it to myself, and not be so honest about, no, I got to fucking prove my father wrong. Yeah. Like, and my family was my family was a long line of car dealers and
Wow.
very successful. So it was like, I grew up wanting for nothing. It wasn't I'm this came from nothing. But I think it might almost be worse because my mom was the result of, everything that my sister and I got while we were young, and we were super fortunate. The minute she passed away, my dad completely cut us off.
Oh, wow.
So it was like going from having all the things and growing up in the best possible situation to go figure it out, which was fucking crazy.
Yeah, and losing your rock
100%.
at such a young age. I'm so sorry to hear that. I can't even imagine, to be honest.
Yeah, but we all have our own journey, and your journey is just as challenging, and and I'm so happy that that we could come back a year later from and it's interesting because we were talking when you found everything out, we were in communication, and it was for me to for us to have not know each other extremely well and have this knowledge of what you're going through, and not be, for me just being an empathetic person and wanting the best for people, it was super hard to not overstep my boundary knowing these things. Yeah. It's crazy. It's a crazy dynamic.
No, you were very supportive. Honestly, everyone at your company that I know that I was in conversation with, some of the most kind people, and
appreciate that.
Checked up on me throughout, and I still talk to a lot of you, so I really appreciate your support. Yeah, it was a really interesting kind of awkward dynamic because at the same time I was I really don't want anyone to know because unfortunately there is judgment, and I just didn't want anyone thinking my work would suffer, or
I think anyone who knows you kind of understands, especially now, going through what you were going through and keeping everything afloat. It's just it's a testament to your strength.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm a pretty bad bitch.
Yeah, apparently you are a pretty bad bitch. So
no, yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. You were gonna say something.
So I guess just. I kind of look to you for mentorship and how I can mentor people, because you're really good about that. And I think that that's my next sort of project in my life, that I really do want to advocate for my peers, the younger generation. If I could help one person be oh yeah, I've been feeling a little off, and go to the doctor and catch something before it turns into, or just be there for people that have siblings or family members that went through the same thing as me. I think that talking it out really is helpful. It's interesting because my oncologist was there's a cancer support group, but I don't think you should go to it because the average age of cancer is 65, and I think it'll just scare you. I'm there is this category of people like me that need support from one another, because it's this crazy traumatic turn of events, and how do you deal with it later? What do I do now? How do I make sure that my mind doesn't go spiral, that it's coming back, and oh my God, and anxiety, and trying to get back into my life, and not knowing how I got sick, so not being able to control it.
Right. Well, all you could do is control the controllables.
Yeah.
And I think that the rest is kind of written. That's where I get kind of peace and comfort on some level, right? It's not your time. It just, you know what I mean? No. So, and I'm even more excited now for the conversation that we're going to have after this with a really special person. And I think that's where, it's everything that you're talking about right now. It's, but I think it's interesting because going back to the commercial real estate industry, for me, I have such a love-hate relationship with the industry, because I'm always with a mentorship, I always want to have a positive impact as a leader in the industry, but I also at this stage of my life have to be really careful with my energy, and I I used to be available for almost anybody, and I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not, I can't, and the way that I want to have an impact is not specific to an industry. It's the world, you know, it's life.
Yeah.
Like I don't, you know, not that I don't want to help people in the business. Of course I do, but I just want to, you know, do good things with good people.
Yeah, I agree. And there is a component of you can't take away the lessons that come with adversity. So if there are people that really want to be in our industry, you have to go through the hard times. That's the only way. You can't save them. No, and it's how you learn. Like, if you mess up with a landlord, they're going to let you know about it, but like, guarantee you won't make that mistake again. Or, you know, there's all of those lessons that come with the hard part of being young.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. Before we wrap up, what would you say to a group of people that, you know, are hearing your story for the first time, meeting you for the first time? What kind of message would you leave them with?
I will leave you with, we are not invincible. Tough things can happen to you. Listen to your body. If you feel like something is wrong, check up on it. It's peace of mind at the very least. I hope that my story resonates enough with people to realize this can happen to someone that's really healthy, that's really driven, that, you know, takes care of themselves, so that it can happen to me, and just be mindful. Be mindful and yeah, I'm happy to be an advocate for anyone that, you know, needs some advice or just a little push in life. Yeah, just your mind is incredibly powerful, so take care of that first.
So where can everybody find you?
Probably on Instagram or my work email.
Instagram's probably best, right? Easiest?
Yeah, definitely.
Your Instagram is what?
Jessica Jane Farrow.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us today, Jessica.
Thanks for having me.
I just wanna have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we proud, but everybody around prosperity. I just wanna have peace.